Welcome to the Hinkle Shop. So you want to do something on your mill, but your mill isn't big enough to handle it. Something like this ruler that I'm going to use for my grandson. If you want to learn how to do that, stick with me. Let's get started. To begin, remove anything that's going to be in the way of the board. You should always practice this before you go and work on the good piece. So this is the actual board upside down. The board is 1 inch thick at this point. I'm going to practice on the back side, and then I'm going to take it to the planer and I'm going to smooth it all back off to the 3/4 inch depth or thickness that I'm looking for. So right here we're practicing the outline cut to make sure that the lines are going to match up when I go to the actual piece. And as you can see, the board sticks out beyond my wasteboard, so I've added a little board underneath there for some support. So I'm going to mark where the edge of the first cut was to make sure that I pass the second cut. And as you can see, the mill has gone past. I did lose 0 when I moved it around. I didn't do a good job of putting the board back exactly where it belongs, but upon closer inspection you'll be able to see that the first cut loose and the second cut loose definitely overlap, and there's a reason that we need to do that, and I'll explain it when I get into the programming in the software. As you can see, they overlap. You can drill holes in your board in your projects and use them as locator pins. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use one of these squares, and I'm actually going to use the very front of the table. Just going to slide it up like that, and that will work. That'll give me my 0 off the corner. Then I'll put the line across, and when I slide it back down, same thing. I'll line that line up with this square off the front of the bench, table, work surface. Now, because I want my clamps, I want the space between the channels here pretty much centered, I have cut a piece of plywood to act as a spacer between this fence to push it over there where I want it. I'll use the first 2 clamps on this side, lock them in. That'll hold it in the position I'm looking for as far as going against the fence goes. I can pull this forward, get it where I want it with the square like that, and I'm going to mark that spot on my bench so that I know that's the exact point that I worked off of. Like that. Okay. And actually I need to be over here as close to this edge as I can get so that when the board is passed I can still line it up. Alright, let's clamp it down and start cutting out the first thing. Alright, so that's the first half. I'm going to loosen it up. I'm going to put my spacer back in here so that I don't lose my distance this way. I'm not going to change my origin. I'm not going to change anything about that. All I'm going to do is slide this piece like this until I get that line on the edge of the table, and then I'll lock everything down. I need to be sure that it's exactly against the spacer and those pipes, and that line is exactly in line with the edge where I zeroed from to begin with. Once I have that all locked down, then we'll continue. Okay, we're all locked in. This is against the pipes the way it's supposed to be with the spacer. You can see the line is right there. You can see that I've got it right on the money. We're going to continue exactly the same. We'll cut the lines first, then we'll cut the numbers. Now, you did notice that I made a little error. You see how these lines are coming all over to the edge here. That means that this clamp is in the way. So I had to slide this out of the way, let it cut the 2 lines and slide it back. Make your material big enough that you don't have to move your clamps. Make your material wide enough. Make sure your lines maybe don't go to the edge. Just a little hiccup, but we're still in good shape. Let's continue. Okay, two things. Number one, when I make a mistake in the Hinkle shop, you know the golden rule. I tell you the mistake. This line right here is a mistake. That's what happens when you have that line included in your toolpaths. That was my dividing line. Was not supposed to have that in the toolpaths, so be very careful. Make sure that isn't activated when you're doing the rest of your lines. And number two, this is what happens when you just don't have any luck and your number runs right into that dark colored knot. But I think once I paint it, it will hide the majority of it. But let's keep going. So far so good. Looking good. Other than that, okay, we're cut around all the way. As you can see, no cusps, straight through. I was off by just a touch, and I can sand that to clean it up. But let's get it cleaned up, sand up, paint it up, and let's see what the final product looks like. Wire brush, your best friend when it comes to V-carves. We'll sand it, light sanding. I'll slop some acrylic paint in those slots. Acrylic is the go-to for me in the Hinkle shop. And then I'll just go back over it and sand all the mess that I make back off. I'll try to remember not to get that line that I said was a mistake. And I'll show you what we get. Alright, it's all painted. I gotta let that dry and then sand it out. But I'm gonna try to fix that spot because it's bugging me. So I'm gonna take another piece that is as wide so that the grain runs the same way, and I'm gonna do a V-carve inlay right there. That's a 60-degree V-bit. I'll just cut a 30 and a 30 wedge out of this piece, and we'll see if I can pull it off, gluing a little bitty strip in there and then sanding it out. Wish me luck. The tape toaster, who remembers that thing? I don't want that little piece falling down in there. By George, that just might work. I'll put some glue on it and some weight. Then when I sand everything off, I'll sand that out. Putting these on here to create a more even pressure applied all the way across. Alright, so my V-carve inlay worked. You can just make it out. I mean, it's a little off, but at least there's nothing in there anymore and the line is nice and tight. So I'm going to hit it with some golden oak stain to darken it up just a little bit and make it look a little bit more like a ruler than a whiteboard with some paint on it. And yes, I'm going to put some on the back just for the sake of argument, so that, you know the old saying, whatever you do to the front, do to the back so it doesn't warp. So that's what we're going to do here. Like I said, just a touch of color. Yeah, that was a rough cut board in the back side. Wouldn't be the Hinkle shop if I didn't make a mess. That looks a lot better. Let's turn it around so the numbers make sense. I'll let this dry overnight tonight. Come out in the morning and hit it with some water-based poly because it is going to be with James and the kid. I don't want anything nasty for him. Alright, and this is what we end up with. A 48-inch tall, actually it's 50-inch tall, ruler made on a machine that only has the capability of doing 32 inches in length. Now this piece is made out of maple. It has golden oak on it, as I said. It needs to have the clear coat put on it yet. I want to let it dry good before I go ahead and do that. But I sure hope you got something out of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. As always, like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about the Hinkle Shop. And as always, I'll catch you on the next one. Stick around. The complete Carveco programming is next. Alright, so cutting something on your mill that's bigger than your mill can actually handle. I think we're going to stick with a simple ruler design here because this can be quite confusing, and let's make it as simple as possible. We'll do this in the simplest fashion. That way you can advance from there. Okay, so we're going to start with a basic piece here. Now obviously my machine can handle a piece that's larger than 24 inches tall, but just want to keep it simple like I said. Let's begin by putting in some lines for our hash marks for our size indicator. So we'll go over to the line tool here on the left, click on the line tool. I'm going to hover about in the middle, left click, release the mouse and drag across like this. If you let go, it'll snap straight. So let's go right to the corner. When I get to bullseye, I'll click. That puts the line on the work surface. Alright, so we have a line. Now we need to divide that line out by your desired length. Now if you want your ruler divided in 1-inch segments, let me open up the tool that'll do this. So we got our line. We're going to go up here to the block and copy tool. Going to go over here to this side. We don't need any offset for the X. This is block and copy. It is not rotate and copy. So in this case, I'm going to put lines every 1 inch up this stick, making a yardstick basically. So I need the lines at 1 inch. The yardstick is 24 inches tall, so we'll need 24 lines. We'll click apply, and as you can see, it pops them in. We can close out this menu. We can close off of these guys. So there's our line indicators for 1 inch increments. Let's go up to the 12th line and stretch that just a little bit so we know where the 12 inch mark is. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll click on that one. We'll come over to the transform tool over here. And I'm just going to stretch this out just a little bit so it's a little longer than the rest of them. Back to the cursor tool. And that is a basic ruler setup. Now obviously you're going to put some numbers in. I'm not going to go through and put all the numbers into this because it takes a long time, but I will put one indicator in here because I want to show you something. So I've clicked on the text tool. We'll click here. We'll put the number 12 in. Going over to this side, we'll click create. Let's zoom in a little bit. Now as you can see, my 12 is nowhere near this line. So in order to get this over there in line with these marks, you'll do this with every number. Click on the number first, push shift, push on the line that you're looking to line to, right click the mouse, and then you're going to go to align vectors right here, sliding over, and you're going to align vertical center. Now as you'll see, the 12 is going to jump down, and it's now dead straight across with that 12, with that line. The only problem I see at this point is it's way too far over because I'm going to put a cutoff line all the way around it. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to push Alt. Alt holds it in a straight line. I can move like this, and as I go around in a circle, you can see it's snapping back to its original point. So if we just go across here and pull it closer to the line, that will definitely be a better spot. Releasing the mouse before you release Alt, and there we have it, a basic 24-inch ruler. All right, let's zoom back in here. Actually, let's zoom out just a touch. Let's put the cutoff line all the way around the outside. We're going to go to the square tool, and I'm going to grab this anywhere, and I'm just going to pull it out, drag it all the way down to the bottom, not worrying too much about the size. going over to this side to set the size. Yes, I want it 24 inches tall, and let's call it 3 inches wide. So we'll take that number down to 3, and we'll click Create. We're going to push F9 to put it in the center. We can close out this menu. Let's go back to the cursor tool and click off of it. So there's our basic shape, as I said, for our ruler. When we get done, it'll be cut along this rectangle, and the lines will run off of this edge so that you can actually use the thing if you chose to, instead of it being just a decorative piece. Pardon me. So now, here comes the part that gets a little bit confusing for folks. You've got this big model, it won't fit on the machine. How do you figure out how to cut it so that it will? So we need to cut this stock in half, virtually cut it in half, or simulate that we're going to cut it in half. We're not actually going to do that, but we need a dividing line here. I'm going to zoom in. I want to cut this thing as close to the center as I can and make 2 pieces. Now if you had 3 and 4 and 5 pieces, you'd have to divide it out using the same principles, but in this case we're going to go 2. I don't want to put the dividing line right dead on 12 inches because that'll make it difficult to carve out that number 12. So we're going to go 11 and a half. You can go 12 and a half or 11 and a half. That'll put you very, very close. Let's drag in a line, guideline, just to make this simple. Right click over the guideline, edit the line. Let's go right to 11.5 and apply. That puts the guideline right where I want it. And we're going to simply draw a line straight across that guideline. So we're going to use the line tool. When we get this symbol right here, left click, release the mouse, drag straight across. And as I said, this is an over-exaggerated line. It doesn't need to be quite this long, but for simplicity's sake, I'm doing it this long. Now you can push the space bar, or you can go directly to the cursor tool to stop the line tool from dragging another line. If I push space bar, as you can see, now we have our dividing line. If you go up to View, you can delete the guideline. You no longer need that. Now we'll go to the cursor tool. So this is a simulated cut in your 2 pieces, relatively close to the center. What we need to do now, a very important point, is split this half from this half. And there's a reason that we want to do this. We can't just slide this all down and try to cut and have it work. Let me go to another demonstration here and I will show you what I'm speaking of. So I'll minimize this and I will grab this model. Okay, this represents a toolpath being cut by 2 end mills. This line and this line are the outside borders of the cut. Imagine that this area has been cut down. And this would be the line that the 2 end mills, or the end mill, is following on your ruler. If we don't have an overlapping vector, I'll show you what will happen. So hover in the middle here. So as the end mill travels down its path like this, if it stops here and does not overlap, now this area here on your ruler will not get cut out, and you will have to chisel that out and mess with it. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is take this end mill and have it pass over that one and remove all of this material and cut it cleanly. So again, we don't want to have the end mill slide down like this and stop, or move down and stop, because of those cusps, they're called, will be in the way and have to be cleaned out. We want it to continue on until it completely removes all of the material. Let's go back to the other piece. All right, so having shown that, my point on this model is the end mill is going to cut along here. We don't want it to stop right there, and we don't want this end mill to come up and stop right there, because then you'll have that cusp problem that I was talking about. So how do we get around this? Well, we need to cut these 2 vectors and have these vectors overlap these vectors. The way you do this, go to your node editing tool, come down here, activate that vector, hover somewhere in about here, right click, cut the vector. Going over to the other side, relatively close to that, straight across, right click again, cutting the vector once more, right here. Now if I go to the cursor tool once more, and I click on these vectors, you can see that they've been severed. This vector is no longer connected to this one. Let's zoom out so you can see. I still have the nice bottom piece, but I don't have the top. Also, if I click the other ones, I now have the top, but I don't have the bottom. But as you can see, we still are cutting at the same point, and we don't want that. So what we need to do is go back to the node editing tool, hover over these nodes until you get the square, push Alt to lock it in, left mouse click and slide it up about halfway to the 12. Release, go over to the other node, push Alt again, left click and slide it up so that it is relatively close to the first node position. Release the mouse, and now if we go to the cursor tool, you'll be able to see that the upper set of vectors goes down below the dividing line, and the lower set of vectors goes above the dividing line. So now we have two sets of vectors. Okay, so now how do we make our toolpaths? All right, let's click off of all of this. Now the one thing you want to remember is you are going to create vectors for the bottom, which will mill out on your mill. Then you're going to grab this whole upper piece and you're going to lower it down to the bottom and carve those. Your origin position is right there on that line. Again, we're not going to cut that line, but we're going to use that as an indicator. So when you're out in the shop, select your piece of wood that you're going to use and draw that line exactly across that point on your stock. You'll set your machine up, you'll carve this out, then you'll grab your stock and you'll slide it down until that line lines back up with your origin. And I'll show you how to do this here. And then when we go out to the mill, it'll make more sense. So let's start with the lower half. What we're going to do is highlight all of these lines. I'm going to go over here to the profile toolpath. We're going to cut along. I don't want to go 3/4 of an inch deep. I don't want to go through the entire piece, so I'll go 0.125. That'll be our finish depth. I'm going to use a 60-degree V-bit to create these lines. Scrolling down, I've already set the material thickness at 0.75, and I'm going to call this lower lines, and we'll calculate. Okay, we have those. Closing out this menu. Now we need to do the profile cut that goes around the outside to cut the ruler loose. Clicking on the bottom vector only, we'll go back up here to the profile toolpath. I'm going to zoom in because I have something interesting that I want to show you here. I can't explain why this does this, but when you sever the vectors like this and you create your toolpath, when you hit calculate now, even though you've chosen outside, the tool is going to travel on the inside. There's two ways to fix that. One is to go up to vectors and reverse them. The other way is to simply lie to the machine and tell it you want to do an inside vector. Let's create this toolpath so I can show you what happens. Start depth is 0, finish depth is 7.5. Let's use an 1/8 inch end mill. 1/4 inch end mill, sorry. I'm going to go 0.74. I don't use a lot of tabs in my work. I use flush trim bits and things of that nature to clean up the edges. That way I don't have to worry about tabs and I don't have to sand the things out. So if I go 0.74, it'll cut almost all the way through, but it'll leave me enough material that I can hit it with a flush trim bit. Okay, so sliding down, let's call this lower loose. I'm going to zoom in here before I hit calculate. So as I said, we have an outside profile toolpath selected. When I hit calculate, watch where the toolpath goes. It's going to go right here on the inside. As you can see, as I said, it's cutting on the inside. So if we just simply choose the other opposite, which would be inside, and calculate, it now cuts on the outside. So a little confusing. Just take your time when you do that and pay attention. So now it's cutting on the outside of the vector where we're asking it to. And as you can see, the vector has crossed the center line, so we're good there. Closing out this menu, we now have the lower lines and the lower cut loose. Let's shut off the vectors. And this is where we do the slide. Highlighting everything, because we're going to pull everything down. I'm going to hover over this line, our dividing line. I don't want to be too close because I want you to see what I'm up to here. I want you to be able to see the bottom. I'm going to hover right there. I'm going to push Alt, left click, and drag the entire model down to the bottom until it lands on the origin. Right there. You can move left and right on this line a little bit until you get the crosshairs like that. Let me scroll in so you can see. When you land on the corner, release the mouse, let go of Alt, clicking off. I didn't get the upper lines. Let's just undo that. And I'll do it again, not so far out, so that you can see that everything comes down together. Now that you understand what I'm doing, pushing Alt, dragging down, getting the crosshair, letting go of the mouse, and there. Now we have all the lines, we have the number 12, and we have the upper half that is now on the origin of your machine, so we can cut this out. Simply make your toolpaths the same as before. Let's click on all of the lines. Let's make sure I got them all this time. I do. Profile toolpath, start depth 0, finish depth 0.125 again. Going to use a 60-degree V-bit. Going to calculate. I made a mistake there. We need to go along. Remember, go along when we do that. Calculating now. So now we have the lines. We'll close this out. Sake of argument, let's create the toolpath for the number. We'll go to create a V-bit toolpath. Start depth 0, limit max tool depth to 0.125. Let's use the same 60-degree V-bit. We'll select that. Continuing down, we won't need a roughing tool. Let's name this 12. Pretty straightforward. Calculate that. Close out this menu. Now we'll select on the border, and as you can see, it's passing beyond the line again. Profile toolpath. Remember what I said? We're going to do an inside. We're going to lie to the machine or lie to the programming. We're going to use an 1/8 inch end mill for this. We're going to select it. Scrolling down. Oops. I don't want to go 7.5. I want to go 0.74. Now I'll scroll down, and we'll call this upper loose, and we'll calculate. Now, simulating this is not going to do you much good, because if I simulate everything, you're going to see a mess where everything has been carved down here on the bottom half of your stock. Let's do it just so I can show you. Simulate all toolpaths, and as you can see, we have a mess. And there, it's going to fool you to think that nothing is lining up because there's so many lines in there. Don't pay any attention to that. You are correct. Deleting the simulation, bringing back the vectors, shutting off the vectors. So that's the programming. Create your toolpaths and then save them to separate toolpaths in your file, however you have saved toolpaths in the past. And thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.